Hey y'all, welcome to the Devon A. Morris Unfiltered Call-In Show. Have a seat. Let's get ready. You have any questions? Come on, call in. Come on to that Discord channel. Do me a favor, get the unfiltered crew some finger snaps. We're ready to get started here. Mondays, 8 p.m. Every single Monday, we're here. I'm excited about it. Are you? Let's get this show started, y'all. The greatest Scrum show on earth. I'll see y'all soon. Enjoy. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Unfiltered Call-In Show. I am your host, Devon Morris, here to have a conversation with you. Just to have a conversation with you. It's a beautiful Monday. It's President's Day. Some of you all had to go to work. Some of you all did not have to go to work, which is a good thing. You know, I didn't have any training today, so I'm feeling good. So welcome to the show. This is a call-in show, so you're welcome to call in. We normally start, just so you understand the agenda, we will go through some announcements, and then we will actually talk about the topic of the day. You know, you're not George Washington, but I need to teach you how to be a badass when it comes to teams. But here's the deal. We need to talk about those difficult teams, right? And some of those things that you can actually do, which we'll say is pretty simple once you really take a look at it. But the idea is that we're going to work our way through that. So for those people that are over there in LinkedIn, I'm waving at you, right? For those people on YouTube, I'm waving at you. Obviously, we record this. We're live on YouTube. We're live on LinkedIn. We'll probably find other places to go live in the future. But this is how we do, how we start, how we go. Period. So welcome again. Devon Morris here. A few things to talk about this week. If you haven't been exposed to it, this week is Agile for Humanities Conference, the 2022 conference, and I'll be at that conference. Hopping in and out of the conference, having good conversations, right? Having good conversations. So I'm looking forward to that. Next month we have a Melanated Action Society where that is going to have a meeting next month, but I'll talk about that again in the future. Let's see what else. In terms of classes, I finished a whole series of hardship classes. Like, I did 2 of them in the past 2 weeks. And we always have a lot of wonderful people come into the hardship classes, and I did a couple weekend classes because, you know, since COVID, I probably do weekend classes every quarter, right? Because people are preferring to come to weekday classes more than to weekend classes. Now, that being said, the next CSM CSPO that is public is going to be mid-March 14th, and then probably the week after that, we're going to have that CSM CSPO, and then come April, we're going to actually have a advanced CSM, advanced CSPO, and then we're going to do a certified Scrum practitioner for those that don't know, or at the very least interested in that. I will give out all the information that we need to give out probably a little bit later. I just want to make sure we're kind of good. If you're over in the LinkedIn world, welcome. If you want to know more about what we do in terms of the show, I would say come join us on LinkedIn. Come join us on YouTube, right? If you join us on YouTube, you can come on over there and subscribe. So I'm going to drop that link right in the chat. I will drop a link for you all to go ahead and join us. I'll do that right now and think about joining us live on the show. But how we operate here is really not a complicated thing. People come here to ask questions, and I will answer them either by them joining the show, or I will answer them by them putting comments in one of the live streams. And normally I take a look at both of them, so you'll see me jumping back and forth to the various live streams because I am managing them by myself. I used to have a whole team that was helping me, but we ran into some difficulty, not because of the people whatsoever. So that being said, let me go ahead and drop that link for the actual joining the show. Just in case you do, the link that you'll see that's being dropped right now on both platforms is for you to actually join the show. Just know we will be starting the show, at least starting any questions related to the show, in probably about 15 minutes, because we'll go through and we'll have some conversation, and just know it's being recorded, so you can always refer back to this later. If you go to the actual YouTube website and go to the actual channel, you'll see 70, 80 plus videos there related to this topic, Agile, Scrum, entrepreneurship, and we'll be expanding that, probably talking more about, healthy relationships, balancing families, right? Establishing thriving businesses. So we'll start getting into more topics like that as we move forward and closer to other things that we are so interested in doing. So next week at this time, not at this time, but next week, we'll be starting our actual self-mastery. The self-mastery challenge will be next week starting on Monday, and that's a 5-day challenge, and you are welcome to join us for that 5-day challenge as well. I will drop the actual site in the actual, in the profiles there, so then you can see them. So you're welcome to join us for that self-mastery challenge. Should be very interesting. It's going to be a beautiful challenge, and it's free. You're welcome to join us for free. So that being said, I dropped a lot of links in there. I'll drop things off later, but let's start having a conversation. People, say hi to me. Drop a hi in the chat. Say something to me so I know that you're there, so I don't feel like I'm here by myself. It's like I don't want to be just talking to the camera. So say hi to me. I'm saying hi to you, so thank you for joining us. The topic that we're going to talk about today is going to be dealing with, 7 tips on dealing with difficult teams. Okay? 7 tips on dealing with difficult teams. So let's kind of start that conversation, okay? I'm going to jump right out and start off with number 1 on my list. And the very first thing on my list isn't a complicated one, right? It's really very simple. It is know when to escalate. You have to put yourself in a position where you know that right place where you need to escalate, right? Where it goes beyond emotions, it goes beyond the relationships that you have with people, when to escalate and when not to escalate, right? So learning how to deal with that and know where those trigger points are is going to be really helpful to you in terms of you dealing with difficult teams. Because a lot of times the difficulty that's happening on a team doesn't require escalation. It really requires more of a conversation and then other things that we will be talking about later. The reason why I say that is because I've had many teams that we've had some really, really tough times, and I really don't want to deal with those tough times. At times, you can feel a little bit intimidated by people battling each other, or you just don't want to deal with it. But the idea is you have to know when it's gone past a certain point and you need to get other parties involved. You need to get other parties engaged in it. So this is really important thing for you to think about, is understanding and knowing that escalation path, knowing who you should escalate to. But I always say to myself, I treat my teams like they're family. So in treating them like family, it's really hard for me to escalate. I mean, it takes a lot for me to have to go have other kind of conversations to bring authorities in, because I feel like it's calling the police, right? And I'm not saying we don't have a no snitch culture or anything like that, but the idea is really very simple. If they're family, we deal with it in-house. We show our dirty laundry to each other. We don't show it to anyone else. And that's the way that I classically like to approach things. So normally for me, making sure I understand the expectations around escalation. There could be some expectations that management has. There could be some bad actors that you have on your teams. But understanding when and when not to escalate, what those paths are, is probably one of the things that you need to take some time and become comfortable with before you really deal with it. I mean, anytime you start an effort, right? So that would be our first one, okay? So moving on to number 2 of 7, okay? And I kind of combine these things because I think they kind of work together. I want you to, 1, observe the team. Because I put a slash next to that I want you to acknowledge the problem. Not just say that it exists, but I want you to hopefully see that it exists, replicate it to some degree. I don't mean you need to go and make bad actors act bad, right? But see that it's happening, right? So observe that team and truly sit back and acknowledge the true problem that exists, because sometimes something that looks like a problem isn't necessarily a problem. It might be the way that team works, right? It may be something that you're not used to. It may be certain sensitivities that you have, right? Or that a particular person on a team has, right? And it could have gone overboard a tad bit, but find a way to, if you can, observe the situations, right? And acknowledge the problem, right? Those are 2 things that you have to do. If you don't do that, then it becomes he said, she said. It becomes, hearsay at that point. And then everybody has their different perspectives, and then you're negotiating amongst different perspectives unless you see something egregious that has occurred. And that's really hard to do. So really the observation part is to get an objective view of what's happening, and then truly acknowledging that problem exists is another thing that you need to do. So those things to me go hand in hand. I mean, you may realize that there's not really a problem, right? You may realize, hey, this is not really a problem. This is the way things should go. This isn't a big enough issue for us to go back to our number 1 or possibly escalating, right? So the next thing that I'm going to do is talk to you about number 3. Because number 3 is more about you than it is about anybody else. It's all about self-mastery, right? Your emotions, your body language, your values, your beliefs. These are things that we will be talking about in next week's challenge. So make sure that you sign up for that challenge. But the idea is that's what we're going to help you through. And self-mastery is part of you checking your temperature. You getting yourself under control. You putting yourself in a position that even if they offend you, like if they personally offended you in some kind of way, you can still bring your objective self to the party. You can bring your objective self to the situation. And then you can truly help them without some perception or without you being influenced by emotions and feelings, right? That's going to take some level of emotional intelligence, right? But self-mastery is really important in this situation because it just gives you an opportunity to understand what's happening here, what's happening inside of you, right? Nobody says that you don't have the right to have a reaction, but there is a point of control after that. And that point of control is the thing that you want to take advantage of, right? Is the thing you want to make sure that you hold tight and you know where you're going to make that next move at. So self-mastery is that 3rd thing, and it's really, really important in terms of the list, right? I consider it to be one of the most important things, and I try my best to practice that. I try my best to be as objective as I possibly can, and trust me, I have been in situations with a client where somebody's clearly racist or sexist or clearly has something against, people who have a different sexual orientation, whatever lifestyle they may have. It doesn't matter to me. I believe all people should be treated fairly. But that starts off with you having some self-mastery of yourself moving forward. So just know self-mastery is probably one of the most critical things that you can do, but it's something that you need to study, become very good at dealing with yourself. Number 4 isn't a complicated thing. It's probably one of the most important things you'll hear about if you're an agile coach or any kind of a coach in general, right? Because coaching is really about partnering with people, right? Co getting to that outcome, right? And here's the deal: active listening is probably one of the things that you'll see with the majority of great coaches. They know how to actively listen to what's going on, what's happening, make sure people feel like they are being heard. And active listening doesn't mean that you got to come up with a solution. I really want you to stay away from the solution, so and then you can be there fully engaged in whatever's being provided to you. Okay, you will have time to deal with the outcomes after that. And if you're truly coaching, I would expect them to come up with that outcome, or we co-create that outcome together, and we kind of move forward. So active listening is definitely a really big one on that list. I don't know whether you're a Scrum Master, a product owner, even if you're a developer, if you own a business, you're an entrepreneur, you're a mother, a parent, a father, right? You've been through a divorce, you're about to get married, all these things require your partner or whoever you're communicating with or exchanging information with feeling like they've been heard. And that is really, really important. And there's a lot of levels to that. There's a lot of things that you can do within that space. But if I'm you and if I'm not familiar with the topic, go get familiar. There's resources obviously for free. There's classes that you can take to help you with that, and practice it in all chances that you can, because trust me, that is one of those things that will help you with all your relationships, right? So active listening is number 4, okay? The next thing, which isn't controversial at all, but it's just number 5. And that number 5 is really to co-create solutions. Co-create solutions, right? As a coach, as someone that's been involved with Scrum and Agile for a long time, has owned a business, since, 07, really actively working it since 2011, 2012. I don't have all the answers, people. I just don't. And people expect you to have all the answers. People expect you to come up with many of the solutions. But the truth is, I realized early on that a lot of times I have a solution and I think that's the perfect right solution. And the teams come up with something way different that is more palatable for them, and it's a worthy experiment. It's a worthy experiment for us to try, for a sprint or two, try for some time box period, right? And in doing that, that's really, really helpful, okay? So making sure that you allow an opportunity for the co-creation of solutions will also help you deal with the most difficult teams, right? Because realistically, a lot of difficult teams, when you come up with a suggestion, they could just be rebelling against you because they just want to rebel against you. They're just going to do the opposite, right? But if they come up with their own, you're a part of helping them come up with their own, you maybe facilitate them through that process, then you'll be in a situation where you actually have solutions that are either co-created or created by them, I guess created by you too, right? That is going to make everyone be comfortable moving forward in that direction. And you can always think of those co-created solutions as just small experiments, right? Just small experiments that you want to try, test to see how it's going to work, and then talk about it again when you have an opportunity to have a lessons learned, a retro, whatever you're doing in order to talk about problems and how you're going to improve. So all these things are important, but that moves us right up to number 6, right? Because number 6 will help you, help everybody feel like you're truly engaged. You know how they say location is really important when it comes to brick and mortar. And when it comes to even having a website, right? A .com is better location, especially if you're working and if you are selling things in the U.S., right? So location is really important. So follow up is also extremely important, because most people who exchange with you, especially when you run an experiment or you've had a problem and you've talked through various solutions, most people expect some level of follow-up. You know, people even find it acceptable that if you don't really have a answer yet, that they'd rather hear that you don't have an answer just yet, right? Some people rather hear the answer, well, there's no solution to this. We just got to deal with the problem and move forward from there. So follow up is absolutely critical, and the smallest follow-up actually matters, because you can do everything that we talked about before, and if you don't follow up, you just kind of do it all away, right? It's almost like, me having somebody who's interested in joining my fraternity, right? And then I give them my information and they never follow up with me. To me, they're not interested, right? And I'm gonna have a real problem with them when I see them, period, just in life. So following up is absolutely critical. It is a big step. So take your phones and put it in your calendars. Give yourself some reminders if you're really forgetful. There are people that I know that super forgetful, man. They super forgetful. They be forgetting all kinds of things. It is what it is. So I'm not gonna say nothing bad about nobody, but you know whether you super forgetful or not, right? So take care of it. Put a bunch of alarms in your phone and be waking up people, on Saturday morning, Monday or something like that, when they're not ready to get up. So do that to your significant other or whatever, because it's better for you to follow up that team and wake up your spouse. If you need to follow up with your team, wake up your spouse with those miscellaneous alarms that is not supposed to bother them, right? They love you, right? They love you. They should want that from you. They should be okay with it, All right, so I got one last one here, right? Number 7. Number 7 is another simple one, and I find it to also be very valuable. It is be available and be open. Be open to things not occurring exactly the way that you expected them to occur. Be available for people to feel like they can engage with you and have conversations with you. Be available for people to, respectfully disagree with you or bring you different problems or bring you good things that happen, right? Because if you're available, you'll hear about the positives that have happened as well. Be available to see the growth that a team has had, because teams go through formation stages, right? Most people say forming, storming, norming, performing, and then adjourning or mourning, depending on how you want to say the last one, right? And so, and there's other ways, there's other models that point out team formation, but that's probably the most popular one, Tuckman's model. So on that note, these are really the 7 things that if you want to be more like a George Washington in managing teams, these are the 7 things that you would need to do to make sure that you deal with those difficult teams. I can only imagine that Washington had a problem with teams that didn't have a lot of supplies. Teams didn't feel like they're fighting in the cold. And so really, to run it from the top, just to make sure we're good, 7 things. 1, know when to escalate. 2, observe and acknowledge the problem. Okay? 3, self-mastery. And if you're in our challenge, you'll see a lot of that next week. 4, active listening. Okay? If you're not practicing that right now as a part of your life in general, you're missing out. Well, at least the people that communicate with you are missing out. Okay? Co-create solutions with that difficult team. Okay? 6, follow up. Okay? And then 7, be available and be open. I should write an article about that. I should put a blog post out about that. Maybe one day I will. But you have this video, and you're always welcome to come back to this video. So on that note, this is amazing. I'm feeling good. I feel like we're in a good place. What I'm going to do is see if you have any questions at this particular point in time. I would like to open the show up for any questions that you may have. I'm going to drop the actual call-in link. You can click the call-in link if you want to, but if you click the call-in link, that means that you are saying, I'm going to join the show with you. And that's fine. I have no problem with that, okay? Just know anybody that calls in will get priority. The other side of this is, do you have any questions that have come up in the past week, in the past month, that you have related to Scrum and Agile? You are welcome about the tips. I think the tips are amazing. I was thinking about those things for the past 3 or 4 days and how I would just kind of pull them together to make sure that we gave you some good information. So hopefully it was good for you. If you liked it, just go ahead and click on that like button. Give me a thumbs. Give me that like, a thumbs up if you're in LinkedIn, a heart or something like that to support me, whatever it is. So do any of that stuff and I'll be very happy to see it. But that being said, any questions that you have, you're welcome to also add them to the chat. We do this every week, so maybe sometimes we'll end early. Maybe other times we won't. We'll go longer because I've gone longer with these shows as well. So any questions, please type them in the chat or join us on the show. Okay, so this is great. I'm gonna have me a sip of water real quick. So that being said, until I see some questions, let's talk. It's been one of those weeks, right? It's kind of like I love this community that we're part of, because this past weekend I had to fly up to Chicago, and I have my ex-wife's niece who was born the same day as she's born, same day, same hospital, same everything, right? Her husband's mother died, and we're close as family, right? And so I had to have Lizzie actually take over my class for a day. And so I'm really appreciative to have people in the community that are willing to help. So thank you, Lizzie, for helping me on Saturday to take my class for the first day, so then I can come back in on Sunday. I was literally in the airport doing the class, like literally in the airport, right? I was literally in the car sitting at the church, right? At 9 o'clock in the morning, just having a conversation with people, because I really don't like to cancel classes at all. I really don't, because I think people are really trying to get their stuff done, right? So I don't like to cancel classes, but that's what was happening, right? So, everything went fine up in Chicago. I really went in and really left out. I got, leaving at 6 o'clock in the morning. Pretty much I was back in Dallas by 7:30 p.m. So, nice long day, right? But a nice little travel there, so that happens, right? So I can't really complain. Able to get there, get back, and it was a snow advisory and everything else. So I was a little concerned that I may get trapped. But I'm glad I did not get trapped. I'm glad I was able to get back to the DFW, back to Texas, so then we can move on from there. So let me go ahead and look. I have a question here. Let's see. How do you deal with teams who are not happy with your ethnicity? Oh, I just deal with it up front. I don't play around with things like that. If you're not happy with my ethnicity, I'm a little curious about a lot of things. I done made your picture really big there. Let me make sure I take this and pull it down a little bit. But I just deal with these things up front. I mean, literally, if somebody, and I've had people who wasn't interested in me because I'm black, and then weren't interested in me because I'm a black man on top of that, right? I've had people get panicked when I'm coming into a meeting. I have executives who've gotten panicked because I'm coming into a meeting. And anybody that's known me, they know I'm pretty easy to deal with, right? I have a definitely a gruff kind of look, and I definitely am not gonna let you put your hands on me. But the idea though is that I have had in the past an upfront conversation with the entire team to deal with anybody who feels like something like race is an issue. Okay, I have no problem, but I'm telling you right now, if somebody was treating women in a bad way, I would definitely deal with that, right? Because I don't want a female to feel like there's some sexism or harassment that's happening. So I have no problem dealing with issues up front. I told people about how I had somebody who wasn't smelling good, who had a body odor, and things like that you got to deal with. But the idea when it's values and beliefs, you got to really deal with that. And my statement is clearly this, right? I don't really mind you not liking people of my race. I don't really mind you not liking women. I don't really mind you not liking, not being tolerant of different religions, right? Because I was taught, did a paper recently about religious diversity, right? Because a lot of people who are Muslims get treated very differently, right? Especially since 9/11. So really, I don't deal with any of those things. I'm gonna sit down, pull the team together, and we're gonna have a meeting and talk about it and talk about degrees of respect. They can still walk away with the same beliefs. I don't really mind. That doesn't bother me. It doesn't bother me at all. Okay, so I'm good with that completely. But I deal with it up front. And I don't shy away from it because for me, it just becomes a bigger issue. And I never want things to become bigger issues that I could have handled. When I was a young Scrum Master, a young coach, I let things fester sometimes and they just got bigger. That's all. It didn't go away. So my statement is clearly this: deal with it, have a conversation about it, that we all are at work. So there's a common degree of respect that should happen there, and then leave it be. It doesn't matter to me if somebody don't like me because of my race. I don't really care. If they're putting their energy into it, I'm not putting my energy into it, and that means when they see me, they're stressed out. That means that they will live less, not me. I'm not gonna take that stress and put it on my heart. So I just deal with it up front. Just deal with it up front, and that's exactly what I would advise that you do. Okay. So yeah, so wow, thank you, no problem. Just deal with that kind of stuff up front and it will be okay. And again, we're at work, so there's a common degree of respect that we all gotta have for each other, right? So let's go ahead to the next question here, right? Let's see. Augustine, when joining a new team, what are good questions to ask to get to know the team as a Scrum Master? You know what? There is, let me see. There's a guy named, and this may not help you get to know the team as a Scrum Master, but there is and I'm looking it up. So I'm looking it up real quick to see if I can find a copy of this, because if I can find this would be good. So one of the certified Scrum trainers, a guy named Michael James, created a while ago, and he updates it. So it's not all dated information. I'm gonna drop a link in the chat to something called the Scrum Master Checklist. If I'm a new Scrum Master, I probably go to the Scrum Master Checklist and I start there. And this isn't ways to get to know people per se, but this right here will provide you with a way for you to actually make sure that you're doing your job. Okay, so I think that's a good resource for you to put to the side. For me, in terms of getting to know people, you can do activities. There's always an opportunity to do activities. And if you wanna, there's tons of books on activities. So team building exercises is kind of what I'm pointing at when I say activities, because this gives you a way to play a game or a way to collectively get to know each other. You can do things like when you're in a sprint planning, and people are introducing themselves, have them tell everybody one thing that nobody knows about them. Hopefully that's not offensive or anything like that. You can do things like that, but truthfully, I go and shake hands. I treat it almost like I'm running for the presidency of the United States. I never run for the presidency of the United States, but well, you know what? I probably would. I probably would. I probably would. But anyway, here's the deal. For me, I go and just get to know people personally. So I really go and I have a lot of one-on-one conversations, okay? Because I'm trying to learn about the person, their likes, their dislikes, their favorite kind of food, do they got any hobbies? Because the moment I find anything that we connect on is the moment that I take that and take it someplace that allows me to get to know them better. Because I know, based on the things that I've been studying, or at least from my psychology period, is there's a similarity attraction theory, right? That people who have things in common are attracted to each other. So I am trying to find something that I have in common with people. And the moment I find that, I kind of make sure that I talk about it as a way for me to get in with more questions for them. So for me, it is really a one-on-one. Let me take the time to get to know each one of these people individually. That is hopefully beyond work. And if it's beyond work, that is a good thing, because now I have an idea of where they're trying to go. I have an idea what their family is like. I have an idea maybe some of the things that are really important to them in terms of their values. All these things help to make a better team, because I'm putting myself in a position where I can serve them. By getting to know them, it allows me to find better ways to serve them. And if I can find better ways to serve them, that's going to put them in a position where they will be willing to run through brick walls for me. And I want to be in that position, right? I've always put myself in that position, because I always go in and tell teams I am willing to be a dead scrum master if we can go ahead and you do the things that I need you to do, right? So for me, it's more of a one-on-one thing, to be truthful. And again, you can go play games, you can do team building exercises. I've done things like Myers-Briggs, type indicator, collectively as a group, but that'll be a team building thing. There's always something you can do in an hour, play a game, just even if you just go have ice cream. Just go have some meal together, right? That always helps, right? Because you get to know each other a little bit better outside of work. So I won't say there's one good question to ask. I would just say get to know people. Get to know people. If you get to know people, trust me, it will all turn out to be better. And then you can actually support them as they need to be supported. And then once everybody feels like they have a special place with you, then you have a special place with them. Okay, so what I would say to you is get to know every individual that you are working with. That's how I would do it. Okay, and I normally find very, very good results from that. Good question. Thank you for that question. Let's move on to the next question here. Okay, let's see. Any suggestions for great resources to define your leadership style, sharpening your leadership skills? I want to just go ahead and plug and say take the CAL, the Certified Agile Leadership certification. We don't necessarily do it at the Bearded Eagle, but I say that would be a good place to definitely start. I think that, when I look at leadership today, in this world of so much change, I find that transformational leaders are the ones that actually get organizations moving in the right direction the fastest, with people feeling like they're working towards some great purpose, right? So for me, I probably would just there's some leadership skills tests out there. I don't know of any of them off the top of my head that I would recommend, but I would probably take a class on leadership to learn my leadership style, to learn how to deal with that leadership. And then let's take it a little bit further than that. and I would find ways to practice that if I can. So I have someone that is joining us. I don't know if they're truly joining us. We'll see. So let me go ahead and bring them in. Just a second here. Let's go ahead and bring them in. Let's see. Oh, I'll just do it this way. Hello, hello, hello. How you doing there?
Hi, Devon. I didn't mean to
You.
join. I was
Oh, look
trying
at
to
you,
think of the
Karen. How
question. How
are
are
you?
you?
You just took all these classes with me.
I just did, but I have a question.
You had a question already. We just got out of class. Karen, you can't come back and ask questions so fast. Come on now. We had a whole,
No, this is
how many hours
this
did we
is
have together?
oh
Sharon,
my
Karen,
God.
we had 16 plus 16. We've had a whole
32.
32 hours together.
No, we didn't do 32. You went there for all of it.
Oh, now you're going to hold me accountable to the day that I wasn't there. Oh, I see what it is now. But you spent the whole 24 hours with me. How about that
No, this
one?
is you're always teasing me. This is a possible interview question
Okay.
that I'm looking up. If you have a distributed team, agile team, um, what are some suggestions for top critical success factors?
In terms of an offshore team,
Yeah,
well,
like if,
the first thing
if
I
they
would
act.
say is I'll tell you my experience when I first went to. I really started getting agile into distributed teams in 2007 when I was at Capital One. Okay, it was the
Mhm.
first time I really had. Before when I was at Allstate and State Farm, they had these onesie twosie things, but the first time I really started experiencing really different people that had a very different culture and offshore was at Capital One.
Okay.
And I'm going to tell you what I did. It was people from India, okay, so it was Indians, and I went and learned about their culture. I literally dove so deep into their culture that I'm looking at their mannerisms. I look at that. You got to scoot over so I can see you in the camera. You see I'm not in
Yeah,
the
I'm
camera?
trying to
You
I'm
got to
trying
scoot
to
over.
fix
You got to
myself.
get it
I'm on the
right. You see
couch.
I'm not in the camera? You see I'm moving from side to side,
Yeah,
Karen?
I'm trying
Do you
to
see
set it
that?
up.
Karen, do you see how that? Do you see that? You see how I'm doing? So just get yourself right there. You can see what's going
Oh
on.
Lord, I see you. I see.
So, but the idea is that I try to learn about the cultures that I'm dealing with, because
Mhm.
it was, at least back then. I can't say it's exactly the same right now. You'd have situations where you'd work with a female, and there was a 9.5 hour time difference, and they were coming in at our time. And I ran into situations where, the buses would stop running for them, right, at a certain time, and it was unsafe to go out at night, and so I would find ways to share the pain with them. Like I'd come in at 2 o'clock in the morning for some teams, so then I can help them plan during a daytime, so then the women aren't in unsafe situations. So
Okay.
just really learning about that culture, learning about the religion. I read the books. I read the religious books, right? I went ahead and just dove into them. I started eating the food, right? And gained a healthy respect for the cuisine, okay? So realistically, I tried to almost incorporate or embed myself into who they are, right? Now, I know that's extreme. I would say, yeah, that's extreme. But you can only imagine the kind of relationships that I've developed, right? I've developed some really strong relationships. And in me developing those strong relationships, when I would go travel to India, I'd have people that would invite me to their house for dinner
Okay.
because of the relationships that were built over time, right? And so I don't find it to be any different with anyone else. If you are working in, let's just say, I want to say Russia and Ukraine, because that's top of the mind in the news right now. So if you're working in South America, in Brazil, right? If you're over there working in Europe, right?
Right.
You're working in Africa, in India, the Philippines, all these different places, right? I really do try to get to know the people, because, again, it helps me to understand some of the issues that they're dealing with, some of the things that they're faced with. Like a good example would be, I've had teams that would have issues like this. I have one team that I knew of. They had computers that it took 2 hours to boot up.
Oh, wow.
You understand? It took 2 hours. According to them, it took 2 hours to boot up the computer. And so, what do you do about a situation like that, right? Now I'm really getting into, now I need to solve their problems in a whole different way. Because now, as I get to know them, they get to know me, they're more comfortable with having conversations with me. Because now I know the wives' names, I know the kids' names, I know them as a person, and I've given them value. Do you understand? I've given them value, right? And there's such a beautiful thing with that, to make sure that people feel like people and not like they're just a cog in the system, right? Because a lot of times, us Americans, we treat those distributed teams not so well. Not so well. Okay?
Okay. So what if you somebody's asking you about possibly going into that situation? So you haven't worked with them yet. Somebody's
Mm-hmm.
asking this question. Well, what would you do if you had to work with a team? You would say the same thing. I'll try to get to
Yeah,
know them.
I definitely would get to know them. I definitely would make sure they get comfortable with me as a Scrum Master, too. Because the biggest thing that I need to get from them is the impediments that are slowing, is the things that are slowing them down, and I need
Right.
for them to be comfortable enough to communicate with me. That's the reason why I'm getting to know them. Understanding
Okay.
the time zone differences and struggles and all this other stuff, and being flexible around time frames is always a plus, right? Always a plus. But you
Hmm.
also have a different problem, right? You have a language barrier sometimes,
Language. Hmm.
right? You have a making sure that it's clearly understood. Um, the further you are away from each other, the more requirements you have to document, right? Because
I see.
people don't read at the same pace. I had a bunch of French people, people from France, a bunch of people from France that was in one of my classes early this year. I had probably like 16 of them, right? And realistically, they could hear very well. I mean, they could hear me very well, but I had to make sure that I put them in a team together, because
Hmm.
they had to speak to French to each other. So, and then when they're in a group, they can work as a group, because they weren't able to work with the group, with the just purely English speaking groups, because they could hear English very well but couldn't speak it very well. So it's things like that that you got to start considering, because you have to remember that some of the people that maybe are offshore, and again, this is not a stereotype at all, right? They may not be as strong in a language. They may be a little bit different in terms of the communication skills, right? And so I really want to learn those things about people, so that I can make sure that I can remove some of the barriers for them communicating and understanding what it is that we need to do. Yeah,
Okay.
okay. Here's the deal. You got to set up daily scrums that are going to be at a great consistent time
Convenient.
that is convenient for everyone, right? You got to think about sprint planning and days that you're going to start sprints. You remember when I told you that I like to start sprints on Wednesdays?
Right.
Well, that's helpful, right? Me starting sprints on Wednesdays is helpful, because you have to remember on Monday, for folks in the Philippines, 12 hours ahead, at least in Central, they're 12 hours ahead. You got to think to yourself, dang, okay, there come when we when their Monday is our Sunday, and we ain't
Yeah.
working on Sunday here, right? And
Hmm.
so literally we have to start planning on a Friday in order to make sure that they're good to go and got things to work with. And that's the reason why I start on Wednesdays. That's one of the reasons why I start on Wednesdays. So I start making adjustments to help make sure that offshore is as comfortable as everyone else. Does that make sense? And
Makes a
so
lot.
it is really, when I start thinking about distributed teams, finding ways to help make that distributed team as comfortable and as productive and as efficient as possible. Almost like they're working like right here with me, and I could see them every day, right? So that's the kind of position that I would want to be in. Now, in terms of answering that question, I think that all these things can be a part of what you incorporate into an answer for an interview for that. But I know that
Hmm.
may be a little bit more advanced, but Most people, when they're asking questions like that, they're probably looking for the most basic thing about how you set up meetings,
Yeah.
how you're going to communicate with them,
Yeah.
you understanding that there could be cultural differences and time zone differences and things like that. It's probably something that you would want to answer in the interview, because I know the other things that I said is a little bit more advanced. But again, if somebody really knows Scrum and they're really a Scrum master working at this stuff, they will respect the more advanced answer. So I probably start
Yeah.
simple, then go a little bit more complex in terms of an interview question.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Is
See,
that all you have?
that wasn't too hard for you, unless you really want me to ask you questions.
No, you're good. You're good. You're good.
No,
Well,
good.
you know
Thank you.
what? Here's the deal, Karen. As I said to you before, as I said to you in class, I'm here on Mondays, 8 o'clock
Yeah.
Central. This is the place for people to come ask questions. So you're welcome to come back anytime. And anytime you come back, you know I'm going to mess with you. You know I'm going to
Of
tease
course.
you, because I love and care about you, right? So, that's just the way it's going to work, okay?
Yeah.
All right. Well, I
That's.
appreciate you, Karen. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank
All
you
right.
so much.
Have a good one.
All righty. Bye bye.
All right. So, that being said, that was good. Let's see. I'm going to get rid of this. Maybe I should put myself on both sides. Let's see. Boom, boom. I'm trying to get rid of this the side screen, and it's not letting me get rid of it. Let me try this one more time, people, so that it's not there. There we go. I done turned it into me completely. And here we go. So, that being said, let me answer a couple more questions, because we do have some more time here. So, let's see. Suggestions on leadership style. We talked about that. How do you inter-story dependencies? How do you deal with inter-story dependencies or inter-team dependencies? Here's the deal with that. Emilia, you have to really coordinate inter-team dependencies. So I'm assuming that you're talking about, I got one team here and one team there, these two teams that don't really have much in common. They could need handoffs or whatever. All that is just coordination. So it is really a simple answer for that one. It is making sure you coordinate, make sure you agree. Sometimes you got to agree to dates. Sometimes you got to make sure that people understand the predecessor-successor relationships, but you need to make sure that those teams are having conversations. Where can you have those conversations? In a scrum of scrums, or maybe in a product scrum. I separate those two things out, because I think of a scrum of scrums as being to deal with technical issues. And then I think of a product scrum as being dealing with product related issues. So I separate those two things out. But you don't have to have a scrum of scrums or a product scrum to deal with that. I definitely would have some meetings. You don't even have to have any meetings. Make sure that you're having some coordination happening between those teams. You agree on whatever dates you need to agree on, and I think that would take care of it for you. Okay? So good question. Thank you for that question. Let's see. I got Coach Karen. Coach Karen. Well, your name says Coach. You should be on the show. I mean, you should literally be on the show answering questions. So just click the button so you come on now. I ain't got to do this by myself. All right, so I'm getting prepared for interview. So this is a possible interview question. Can you share any thoughts? Can you offer suggestions on top critical success factors for distributed teams? Let's say, we could say technology, but I don't think that's normally mostly solved. The bigger problem that I see teams having, if I had a critical success factor for a team, I believe everything starts off with the requirements. So having good, clean requirements will definitely help a distributed team, because the cleaner those requirements are, the better. I would also say incorporating them from time to time, right? Maybe in some refinement events. When I say refinement, detailing out the product backlog to help them get an understanding, making sure that they are aware of the roadmap, they're aware of the direction that we're moving forward in, allowing them to be a part of the retrospective, because you want to hear the things that are not going right for them as well, so then you can actually get better at those things. So realistically, I'm going to say this to you. I wouldn't treat the distributed team any different than I would treat a local team. Like literally, that's all I'm really saying to you. That distributed team should not be treated any different than a local team. Yeah, they're someplace else, right? Yeah, you got to deal with that, right? But here's the deal. Another thing that I would suggest, if I really, really could just have a little simple suggestion, it would be to have distributed teams that could deliver by themselves without any help from anyone else. So just imagine if you had a distributed team that had a product owner, scrum master, and developers, and they could take on full requirements by themselves without any help from anyone, right? Without any help from anyone, okay? Imagine being in that situation. That means they're pulling from that product backlog, and all the things that are going to be a problem for them in terms of the development process, they can handle. So, you know, when I've had really major problems with teams like time zone issues and all this kind of stuff, I ended up recommending that we make sure that we make these fully cross-functional teams that don't need any help from anyone. The more I can put myself in that position, the better off I am. Now again, that may be an advanced move, right? Because I learned this from being on a distributed team that was in 7 different time zones. We were not productive at all, right? And so I recommended to the CIO at the time that we kill that structure. But they had, you know, legal stuff in place, contracts in place, that wasn't going to allow that to happen immediately. So that was going to be a year's journey for them. So for me, realistically, probably the top thing I would say is really treating the team no different than I would treat a local, co-located team that is sitting right here on shore with me, not distributed at all. Now, if the time zones aren't that different, you can treat them like, if the time zones really ain't that different, right? I've seen teams that have been in just 2 time zones, Central and Eastern, right? And those teams, it's just about figuring out what our communication paths are. And I would actually create working agreements. Well, I guess with the distributed teams, regardless, right? But with those teams that are definitely in 2 time zones, working agreements really worked out really well. Team norms is what people may call them, right? And so I definitely would get some working agreements in place that the team can work through. Biggest thing on that list is communication preferences and how we're gonna prefer to communicate as a team. Making sure you have clear definitions of done. But all these things are really things that you would do for a team that's co-located on shore. So I'm not treating those teams much differently, to be truthful, right? So, Coach Karen, hopefully that's helpful. Have more questions, you can always ask. Let's see. I think I got another one here. Oh, from Karen once again. If you use a project board for swim lanes setting in Jira, right? Do you group by assignees or stories? Normally, what I've seen normally is if I'm using Jira, the swim lanes are going to be based on, so let me make sure that we're clear. When you say swim lanes, here's how I'm thinking, right? So we're good to go. I'm thinking we got columns that exist and we got these section rows, right? Normally when I see swim lanes, right, they're the section rows that go across, okay? And that's okay, right? Now, for me, I would think of those things probably, especially if I'm using Jira, I probably would have swim lanes based on stories, epics. I wouldn't recommend it, but I probably have it based on stories, epics, right? Because it's one of those things where if you made it by a person, let's just say you have Jim at the side, Luis at the side, and Ethel at the side. I'm only saying Ethel because I'm thinking about Sanford and Son for some strange reason, right? So I got Ethel on the side, right? Well, what happens when all three of them are working on one story? What do you put it? Here's my question, right? What do you put it? Because you can't put it in all three of their lanes, right? And so then you'd have to start saying you're the main assignee and somebody's secondary to you, right? And so I would do it by story because you can switch people in and out. Not to mention that when you have a tool, you normally can assign people to a story. You normally can assign people to a story. But the truth is, I wouldn't do swim lanes at all. I think it just adds a layer of confusion that you don't need to have. So I would find ways to eliminate swim lanes. And normally when I see swim lanes, it's normally by some major functionality, major feature, major something, right? That's normally when I see a swim lane, and that normally means a lot of work, and I normally see it across operations. It's where I normally see those kind of swim lanes, right? Because you have the way you get through the work is as columns, and then you have swim lanes that's going across, and it's normally major type of work like this system and this system and this system is what I would normally see. And when I think about a system is a collection of requirements, which is a collection of stories. So I would, if it's me, stories, but it's a much higher level than stories, okay? All right, so I think we may have one more, and then we're gonna wrap at that point. Do you use a round robin style, or you only get updates from those who have stories assigned to them? A round robin style for what is the question, right? Because here's the deal. The team members select the stories that they want to assign themselves to. So in Scrum, the developers pick the stories, right? They pick the stories, right? It's not this gets assigned to them, right? So they pick the stories from the product backlog. Now, I guess if you're in operations or you're working with a bunch of tickets, I can see you using a round robin because whoever comes up, they take the ticket that's at the top, right? So I can see that happening in that kind of work. So for me, I would say to you, if I had to choose between them, I probably wouldn't choose between them. I would actually take a different approach. If I had to choose only these two things, I would actually do an experiment on one to see how it works for us. And then if the team liked it, I say, okay, let's try another experiment and see which one we like better. And then I go with whichever one wins. But here's the deal. I believe in your question, you're talking about a daily scrum. If you're talking about a daily scrum, I've seen round robin, no problem. In terms of getting updates from only the people that are doing work, the question is, why is there people on your team that's not doing work? I'd be concerned about that. That sounds like a problem. And then I'm going to say something else. The developers, Scrum Guide 2020, the latest Scrum Guide says, for the daily Scrum, the developers are the only ones that's required to be there, period. The Scrum Master and product owner would only need to show up if they're a developer. When I say developer, I'm really saying this definition. Anyone that is working on any aspect of building the product, the increment itself, right? Again, a developer in Scrum's world, as of the Scrum Guide 2020, is anyone working on any aspect of building the increment. That is a developer in our world. And only the developers show up to the daily Scrum. That's it. And the developers have the right to pick the format of the daily Scrum. So Scrum Masters are no longer required. Product owners are no longer required. They're only required if they are doing work that's been assigned in a sprint. And if they're doing work that's been assigned in a sprint, then they are a developer by default as well. So that being said, I'm assuming that you're going to that daily Scrum. If you're not, then I just answered both questions for you, okay? So that being said, I am feeling good about this. Here's the deal, people. Next week, we're going to start our self-mastery challenge. That self-mastery challenge is going to be really important because you're going to get a bunch of great stuff in that self-mastery challenge. For those that have not registered for it, I've actually thrown it in the chat. Now, let me just tell you all the secret. I am actually growing this to something that you all haven't seen yet. Well, maybe I'm trying to show it to you and it's just not gonna show. Ah, bar humbug, right? I try to show you something, but it's going toward something that I call Fate Masters, okay? Fate Masters will be coming toward the middle of the year, but we will be doing several challenges building toward Fate Masters, okay? And Fate Masters will be an exciting opportunity, be a live event, a 3-day event, which you'll get more information about. But we're starting off with the challenge of self-mastery. We will have other challenges, maybe another self-mastery challenge as well, for people to continue to build on what they already have. I'm gonna say to you also, if you're not on YouTube, then jump on YouTube and subscribe. If you're on LinkedIn, like this, thumbs up it, right? I want other people to see this. If you're in YouTube, go ahead and subscribe. Give me a thumbs up, right? I really appreciate everyone that has come and joined us. This is always an amazing, beautiful thing. Also remember that this video will be on YouTube. So you're welcome to go there and grab that information. Grab this information, look back at it anytime you choose to. Let me go ahead and throw that link out there for you all in the LinkedIn land as a final thing. But here's the deal. I have had a wonderful and great time. I normally do have a great time here. Look, people, I will see you next week. I'm going to say this. I never said it before. Same bat time, same bat channel. I can't say I'm a 90s kid. I was born in like 73. But same bat time, same bat channel. Peace. I'll see you next time, okay? Thank you all. I appreciate you.